Okay. We have a lot going on, I feel like. First off.
No, this week's been busy.
I was going to say, I feel like we have a lot going on, but look, everyone, look, if you're not watching this, why aren't you? If you're listening to it, go watch us. But we have almost completed the setup.
Almost there.
Like we're so
getting,
close.
We're getting really close.
Yeah, I'm excited. I mean, Connor, I don't know if I made sure the frame could see, but Connor made these desks. So we don't have to talk about that for very long. But he did make these. He is incredible. He's been working very hard, literally morning to midnight.
Pretty close, actually.
Yeah. So, hello, everyone. Welcome back. Boy, do we have some fun for you guys. And by fun, I mean things that you've already known for a long time, but we're now confirming for you.
Fair enough.
But before we get into that, if you guys remember last week, we did have a listener question, and he listened to it, and he has a response.
Was he satisfied at all?
Well, I haven't read the response because I was just going to react with you.
Okay.
So I'm going to read his response. I'm not going to promise that everything's going to make sense. So here's what he says. A sandwich is vegetables or meat with other things that is covered by bread top and bottom with at least one opening. An average house sandwich has 2 pieces of bread, which creates opening all around, while a sub sandwich has one side enclosed by bread, which makes it similar to a hot dog or taco, which are both sandwiches. There are different types of bread, including soft and hard, so an open-faced fried wrap should still be included as a sandwich because it has bread on both sides and at least one opening. Wraps should not be enclosed all the way, and it is either a soft bread or relatively hard bread, in parentheses, fried wrap.
There's also soft tacos, so...
Oh, he did forget about soft tacos.
It's actually more traditional. It was Taco Bell that really popularized frying the shells, but it just tastes so good.
It does taste good, but I think I want to say he's going against your point a little bit. I don't know if he
maybe
agrees.
A little bit.
I think he's just really defining things.
Sounds like he's classifying it as a sub sandwich.
So he's saying that because he said is a taco a sandwich, right? That was the question.
Mm-hmm.
So I think I guess he's saying it is still a sandwich.
I mean, if subs are a sub sandwich and hot dogs are, I mean, he said it as one open end and the other end's closed. I mean,
right.
that's a hot dog. That's most sub sandwiches, assuming you didn't split it right down the middle.
Yeah.
All the way.
Yeah, I don't have a dog in this fight. I'm gluten intolerant, so it doesn't really matter to me. But wait, because I'm thinking about sandwiches.
You can have corn tortillas.
Oh, I was thinking.
You can have tacos.
Dude, listen. I was thinking about sandwiches. All right, it's different. But yes, you're right. I can. I guess I do. I don't know. I mean, I guess I don't care. I don't care.
It's a fun question to entertain and argue about.
All right, Bryson. I shouldn't have said your name, but there it is. There's your answer. Connor kind of agrees, kind of doesn't. He doesn't know how he feels. This is a lot deeper than what we were prepared for.
I mean, and then you get to like tostadas, which is just a fried corn tortilla.
You just opened a door.
You just layer the toppings on top.
You just opened a whole new door. But you could
take 2 of them and put them together.
That's a sandwich.
You could do that.
That is 100% a sandwich.
So then there's half a sandwich?
It's a Hispanic
toast.
sandwich.
It's Mexican toast.
Nancy Pelosi has compared Hispanics to breakfast tacos, which now that I think about it, I don't really think I've ever heard of a breakfast taco.
You've never heard of a breakfast taco?
Not said like a breakfast taco. I'm sure there's like some sort of variation.
What do you think would be in it?
Like hot sauce, sausage, eggs.
Eggs, not so much sausage.
Salsa. Definitely salsa. But yeah. That's all I know. I might look Hispanic, but I'm not actually Hispanic.
No. No, breakfast taco would be eggs. There's normally a Mexican type of pork, which is called chorizo.
Yes, I know what it is.
Spicy, very greasy. Yes. Make sure you dry that stuff out. But yeah, that along with maybe some refried beans and eggs and a taco.
That sounds really good.
That's fantastic.
Awesome. Well, okay. If you have any fun listener questions or serious listener questions, you can DM us on Instagram, Facebook, or email us at residentskeptics@gmail.com.
That's right. Send me some fun questions that I can turn into an over-serious topic.
Yes, he tends to do this a lot. We have a Bible study, and I'll ask icebreaker questions, and he makes them way more complicated than they need to be. But here's what's not... here's what's not complicated. So... There's been this rumor that we're in a recession.
Bit of a rumor.
It's a rumor. And it turns out that it's true. We are in a recession because I knew...
According to who, though?
Oh, my gosh. Okay. So we're in a recession. We do have, I guess, some statistics on that. So I found a certain article that I thought was pretty good at kind of explaining the whole deal. Daily Wire, honestly, I very much like the Daily Wire because they do a very well-structured article. And by well-structured article, I mean that if you are writing a hard news story, essentially you have all the important information at the top of the article, and then the rest of it is explaining kind of that thesis. That's how you're supposed to do it in journalism. So I feel like, I'm not saying they're completely unbiased, but I'm saying with articles like this that talk about numbers, they do a very good job at breaking them down. So I like their articles very much, especially for stuff that's number-based. So I'll go ahead and just kind of quote from their first couple paragraphs here. So according to Daily Wire, quote, "The United States is in a recession after the economy shrank for a second straight quarter by an annualized rate of 0.9%. On Thursday, the U.S. Bureau of Economic Analysis, BEA, first estimate of the nation's gross domestic product was worse than the predicted expansion of 0.5%, FX Street noted. Economists widely define a recession..." This is how they define it, Connor. They define a recession as 2 consecutive quarters of negative growth. So with a quote here from the BEA, they said, quote, "The decrease in real GDP reflected decreases in private inventory investment, residential fixed investment, federal government spending, state and local government spending, and non-residential fixed investment that were partially offset by increases in exports and personal consumption expenditures, PCE," the BEA explained. "Imports, which are subtraction in the calculation of the GDP, increased." Okay, so basically we have an increase. We have a recession on our hands. We have negative GDP growth, bad stuff. We all knew this was coming. But you actually asked a good question earlier.
Yeah. How do you define negative growth? And this seems to be getting redefined?
Yes. So there have been, I've heard reports that a Wikipedia page on recession was the attempt to change it was like 41 times to change the definition.
I think it was over that. They actually locked the Wikipedia page if I recall reading that. Yeah, they locked it down because you can have users and non-users come in and edit stuff. And they ended up locking it to keep that from happening. But it was also released in a government blog, I believe.
Oh, was it?
White House blog. Yeah, they're basically trying to say that it's not two quarters of negative growth. Which negative growth to me kind of sounds like an oxymoron, just a little bit, but
well, yeah, because I guess growth goes up, so we should call it negative shrinkage. Yes, but for the sake of less confusion, because the left has already been confusing by trying to change the terms, which we can't be surprised by this, right?
No, terms have been getting changed for years at this point.
Well, I just feel like the left constantly does that. Like, they're always trying to change the term of something. Like, you know when you're in an argument with someone, right? And you're arguing over, well, honestly, this is a great example, that the sandwich and taco, all right? So what he's actually doing in this is he's trying to define the terms.
Yes.
And when you define the terms of an argument, you're like, oh, well, now we can actually have a structured debate now that we have defined our terms. The left is weird because they're like, well, we're working off a completely arbitrary, nonsensical definition that we've decided to make to benefit us in the moment.
Yeah, no, they'll change the way words, what they mean to get it to work for them. Think about the word, maybe even sexual assault. That has become a very broad, very large term. And it's gotten light enough to the point where they're like, you're sexually assaulting me with your eyes. Like, just because somebody leered at them. I'm not condoning leering. You should not be leering. You should not be ogling. Definitely should not be touching. But it's not sexual assault at that point. And we could probably go down quite a list of things that have kind of changed or become all encompassing. Racism is another one. Racism is there. You don't even get prejudice anymore, which always felt kind of like a lesser degree of racism.
Everyone has some level of prejudice, I think.
I would argue that you do one way or another, and you haven't been around the world to rid yourself of that prejudice that could be for anybody. Eventually, I was just reading the article about those European islands that just slaughtered several dozen dolphins.
That's so sad.
Like, the beach is blood red, by the way, and
Moses did not do that. That was not him this time.
It was not Moses this time. No, but it's like they just did that. I mean, you're going to have a bit of prejudice towards the islanders that still take part in this. I think it's an annual, not ritual, but an annual event where they're just slaughtering dolphins. Then they didn't use all of the meat, all the material that came from them. They actually, from the report, they were shipping off truckloads of blubber to go get incinerated because they had too much. And there's just no reason to go and do senseless killing. We can't even talk about the farming in America at this point.
Yeah, we should probably do some research on that and do an episode. That would be really good because I know there's a lot going on with that. And honestly, I have not been able to keep track, especially with all the stuff with with redefining a recession. But no, I think you brought up some really good examples. Like, they've redefined racism, where racism no longer...
It's any little slight, and then you get like the micro racism and the microaggression. Like, all of that stuff kind of plays out, and they're just kind of becoming these all-encompassing words that really need to be broken down more.
Well, they had an original meaning, and then people just decided that they were going to only go on the denotation of the word as opposed to the connotation. The connotation is something that's solid, like that's what it means. Denotation, though, it's kind of what you associate with the word. So they've done that with race. They've done that with man and woman. They've tried to... that's the most obvious example.
Yeah, sex, gender, all of that's been redefined. They redefined the pedophilia.
Yes, which we will be talking about a little bit. Again, things that you're not going to be surprised to hear about from us. But anyway, you did ask about the idea of redefining a recession. And so I did find an article from the New York Post, which talks about Brian Deese, he's the current White House economic advisor. And so the article actually does a good job. So when in doubt, just read from the article, because that typically will do the trick. Okay, so the White House was accused of redefining the word recession on Wednesday after 2008 comments from the current White House economic advisor resurfaced, appearing to counter his remarks on the matter just this week. So on Tuesday, Brian insisted that 2 negative quarters of GDP growth is not the technical definition of recession. It's not the definition that economists have traditionally relied on, President Biden's economic advisor said, making a guest appearance at a White House briefing. But on Wednesday, resurfaced 2008 comments from Deese revealed that he used to believe that was the technical definition of a recession. Economists have a technical definition of recession, which is 2 consecutive quarters of negative growth, Deese said at the time, according to RNC Research. So if you go to this article, the good news about articles these days is that they have all their sources pretty much linked right to the words, so it's not like at the bottom of the page. My sister, she's been writing articles for us, and she started off doing that, putting it at the bottom of the page, and I said, nope. No.
Link them in the document.
I said no. She's a great writer, but she's very kind of, I guess, old school. I don't know. But she has a different style of writing. But so that's just like a pretty good, solid example of saying one thing and then turning around and saying something completely different later, just depending on how you feel.
Yeah, I find it really odd that they don't have like a hard definition that they use. Like, this is the technical definition that's widely used, but what's the actual definition? What is the literal definition?
I think it is Like, I think everyone has pretty much agreed it's 2 negative quarters of GDP growth.
Mm-hmm.
And here's the thing. I admit this pretty, like, straight up. Like, I am not an economist. I am not... Probably the economy is probably my worst area. But I do know...
It's a rough and difficult area to understand.
It is a rough and difficult area. But I wrote an article about this about a couple weeks ago that was called... In debt... I'm trying to remember what I called it. But it was Finance to Death in Debt for Life. And basically in that article I said that you don't need to know a ton about economics. What you need to know is something that you should have been taught very early on. And the phrase is called, there ain't no such thing as a free lunch. There ain't no such thing as a free lunch. And what ain't no such thing as a free lunch means is that you get nothing for free. Nothing just pays for itself. Someone somewhere is paying for it, whether it's you or someone else.
Right.
So if someone says, oh, this money is free, no, it's not. It's coming from somewhere. And so Democrats know full well that if they say, if they try to convince people to do a package that's supposed to help with inflation by giving out money, it has to be up to the people too, to some extent, to be like, wait a minute, that isn't free money. It's coming from somewhere, and we're going to have to pay for it eventually. And so that's pretty much what I've worked off of for the most part. And I stick to very basic definitions. 2 negative quarters of GDP growth is a very basic definition that I can work with. When you start changing my basic definitions, I get kind of upset. And I think everyone else is getting kind of upset that they're trying to redefine it.
For real. I just did a quick look and found a July 12th article from Forbes, David Roddick and Benjamin Curry. But just kind of skimming through here and looking for the paragraph where this is all coming from. They say in 1974, economist Julius Shishkin.
Ooh, Shishkin.
Yep, Shishkin. Yep, I'm gonna go with that. Shishkin came up with a few rules of thumbs to define a recession. The most popular was 2 consecutive quarters of declining GDP. A healthy economy expands over time, so 2 quarters in a row of contracting suggests that there are serious underlying problems, according to Shishkin. This definition of a recession became a common standard over the years. So that's initially, it sounds like, where that is coming from.
Yeah.
1974. So we are well past 30 years of this at this point.
Okay. Yeah, and I mean, that's how we've used it to define recessions in the past, because we had the recession in 2008, 2009.
Yeah, it was I believe it was in the first term of Obama.
Yeah,
that happened. Of course, it was on the back of Bush's war in the Middle East.
Yeah.
So I can't blame Obama for that.
And I have to be honest, I was so young, I don't remember much of that one, because I was a kid. But I do remember that Michigan was a disaster.
Yeah, I remember that was the last time that gas prices hiked up really high, because at the time there were people in California that I knew, and I was living in New York, and we were 2 of the more expensive states, and it was always California was always winning for highest prices, but that was the first time I would think that they went over $4 a gallon, and New York was in the high 3s, and now here we are in North Carolina with gas that went way over $4 for a time there.
Yeah.
So
it looks like Biden is just following in Obama's footsteps. And of course, we don't know why the gas price is complete. Well, someone does.
Yeah, except Biden doesn't have a war in the Middle East.
Yeah, I was going to say, maybe Obama actually has like a better excuse.
He's doing okay.
Yeah, maybe he has a better excuse, but it's like they're both following the same path. So that's
Trump didn't give him a war he didn't inherit a war from Trump. In fact, he inherited no wars from Trump, which is one of the wins that he has under his belt. But yeah, no, Obama inherited a pretty bad war that got some mixed motives in there, I would say, by the time, I wouldn't say by the time it concluded, by the time they were given a chance to invade and go get some oil.
Yeah. Yeah, fun stuff there. But I think that out of all the things that we can kind of take from this, is that they're trying to redefine it, but let's just say it's defined as a recession or it's not. It doesn't matter. Americans know that the economy's in trouble, and the Democrats trying to do that isn't going to hide the fact that their grocery bill is going up, that their gas bill is going up,
Yeah, if your fuel bill goes up, if your gas bill goes up, everything else goes up because all of your food, despite if there's anybody out there that has the misconception that the grocery stores somehow just magically get food, because I have seen that in interviews, and it's astonishing. It's like, well, if there's no farmers, we'll just go get stuff from the grocery store. It's like, no, that comes from the farmers, but it gets there by truck. Yeah. I imagine there are probably some out there that get there by train, which is
dude, there's a garden in the back of the Harris Teeter. There's a garden. There's a
grocery store up north actually that has gardens,
which is cool,
where they bring their organic stuff, but it's not enough to feed the entire population. So it's coming from these mass farms. They're being trucked in. That's using diesel. If that is going up, if the diesel price is going up, then it's costing them more to get food to the grocery. So the grocery store is going to up their prices. So you're feeling it at the pump station, you are feeling it at the grocery store, and you're going to feel it everywhere else because it just spreads out. And this is why I think it is so confusing to be an economist, is everything is kind of interconnected one way or another. Everything's touching. Airline tickets have gone up as well, for sure.
And I heard that that's just a mess, but that's a really good point. And that's why I think economics is so difficult, because there's so many parts that they touch each other. They all kind of affect one another. So I have a lot of respect for people that do a really good job at this and end up talking about it. But what's happening in America, it's affecting everybody. I don't think anyone is buying this, that we're not in a recession. I think that the reason why the Democrats are doing this is because they want to try to get rid of some of that heat, especially before the midterms.
I agree. And one of the best tactics that they can do, which they have employed for years, is to change the words that we use in our language. It confuses the talking points. And if you have a breakdown in the language, if you create this language barrier where conservatives mean one thing and then liberals mean one thing, or they mean another, you will not have a very robust or informative conversation. It just kind of, you will not understand each other.
Yep, I agree. So I feel like the left doesn't really stop redefining terms or banning terms.
Agreed.
That's been happening a lot. We shouldn't be too surprised. I think you actually brought it up to me this week when we were trying to figure out what we were going to talk about. You were saying that Reddit and Twitter, they banned the word groomer.
Yep, they banned the word. Correct? They banned the word groomer. So you can't call out people that are pedophiles or who are trying to groom children. That is another thing. And the reason that, if I remember correctly from the articles that I was reading, their grounds for it was that it's a slur against all LGBTQIA plus people.
Yeah. All. Yeah. I think that when you start policing language, that gets really dangerous, because I think that there are, and I was thinking about this today while I was in the shower, which is where all great thinking happens, because I was thinking about this article, and the article that we have pulled up is actually from it's not a right-wing news site whatsoever. I think it's from like some sort of gay site, I think LGBTQ site. But I thought that they still broke it down fine. They obviously had their own slang and, their own style to it. And they disagree with anyone that thinks that it's not reasonable to ban groomer. I think it's a he. I don't know who wrote this article precisely. Oh, no, it's a woman. But she did reference 1984. So nodding to the relationship between moderating hate speech on Reddit and a complete Orwellian dystopia. And in parentheses, she's like, a little extreme, no? I'm like, yeah, it is extreme. What you're doing is extreme. It's very extreme.
It's very
extreme. But anyway, I was thinking about this in the shower today, and I was like, there's plenty of homosexual people that are not groomers. They're not. And they just want to be, there's a good amount of them that want to just be left alone, which I think is fine. Again, I used to be very libertarian on homosexual marriage. Obviously, religiously, I can't really call it a marriage, but I guess homosexual unions. But you'll notice that the people that are the most loud about this and the loudest about these different terms, about talking about this with kids, indoctrinating kids, they tend to have some issues. I feel, and this is just a feeling of mine, I think a lot of these people have a higher tendency towards pedophilia or grooming, whether it is sexually, which that is a thing, or ideologically. They have a bend towards that. The ones that are really loud, at least.
The ideological ones have been happening in the school systems for quite a while.
Right. I mean, the school system is, and I've said this about homeschooling as well, your children are going to get indoctrinated one way or the other.
Yeah, there's no way around that.
The question is, what type of indoctrination do you want?
Mm-hmm.
That's what you have to ask yourself. That's what you'll have to ask yourself eventually when you and Preston have kids. Is, you know, what kind of environment do we want them to learn and grow up in? Because when you send off your kid for like 8 hours a day, they're gonna pick up something.
Yeah, and I think it's safe to say that as far as kids are concerned, if they're gonna get indoctrinated, it might as well be an indoctrination which won't make you dislike your kids.
Or have them like really disliking their country.
Or they end up disliking you.
Yeah. And honestly, you know, kids, they're not completely controllable where you could raise them in a conservative manner, which I was raised in a conservative manner. I was raised in a lot of that stuff. I had kids that I know that were also raised that way, and they completely went off the deep end. Christian conservative, no longer. So, I mean, it's not really a guarantee.
No, not a guarantee by any means.
At least you can say you tried. But if anyone's ever like, oh, they indoctrinate with Christian values and conservatism, yes, it is indoctrination both ways around. But I think I would argue that one of them is much better than the other. That's just me. But so they decided that they're going to get rid of Groomer. It says it's on Reddit, and it is on Twitter, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, okay. Actually, the reason I found out about it is one of the other journalists that I follow, Tim Pool, called somebody out, I think with some evidence that they were grooming kids. And he called them out as a groomer, and Twitter locked his account and told him he had to delete the tweet. Which is absolutely insane. If someone is a groomer, they're a groomer. Like, I mean, even if let's just say that they're not. Well, actually, I'd have to think about that. He's kind of been going hard against the drag queen book readings, which I've actually been by some of them. Just by chance, come in and was like, oh, okay.
It's really disgusting.
So he's really been going for those because drag is, in its nature, there is sexual, what would be the right word there? There is a sexual energy about it, and that is kind of part of some of the shows where they are taking clothes off. And so you have kids at a drag event, that's not really a place for kids. I would not take kids to go-go dancers. I realistically wouldn't even take them to Hooters. So if that kind of lands on where I would take kids, that pretty much should define the rest of it for you. Yeah, it was actually funny. Steve and I went to a movie last night. And so went to go see Elvis, which was very good. It wasn't super woke. I think they did a pretty good job. A little long, but that's okay. So they had, I don't remember what the movie was called, and maybe I should have remembered, but I was trying so hard not to look because it was basically an entirely gay movie about this gay guy who is opening like an LGBTQ plus IA. You mean the movie called Elvis? No, that's not what I'm talking about. You've ruined my train of thought. Stop that. Okay. It's a movie about this guy, a gay guy, opening an LGBTQ plus history museum. And so he meets this other, it's like a love story essentially, but except it's with two guys. And it's all focused on gay, transgender, all that stuff. It has all the stuff. It's all shoved in there. All the subliminal messages that people put in the movies now, they're like, screw it, we're just going to put it all in a 2-hour movie. And so in this movie, there's this straight couple, and they're talking to their gay friend about this guy. And she's like, well, maybe the problem is that you guys are both bottoms. I only have slight ideas of what that means. But it gets worse. It gets worse. Okay, so it's this couple, and their kids are in the room. And guess what they all start doing? They all start joking about sex, and these kids are like 5. Okay, they're not very old, and they start like dancing with their butts. All right, given the context. So twerking. Yeah, kind of. Yeah. Okay. So obviously, this movie is meant for adults, but it's
I would say that's almost why it's a little bit horrible, is that you have a scene in the trailer of these kids being like, yeah, it's okay, bottom sex, and like, no! Like, if I saw my kids making heterosexual movement, or whatever you want to call it, I'd be like, no.
Stop.
And so they're almost normalizing this for children, and they're showing it all, hey, kids, no, they can be a part of this too.
Oh, yeah. I remember Cuties from Netflix.
Yeah. That one did get a lot of backlash.
There's that one. And then even predating that though, and this one gets a lot of views because it's still going, is like the Toddler and Tiara shows where they have these little girls that get all beautied up and makeup and spray tan and honestly sometimes pretty skimpy outfits. I know it's a little girl, but I mean more the reason, like, she doesn't have that much to show off, if anything to show off.
Right.
Realistically shouldn't at that age, but
yeah,
you know, nevertheless, they're going to dress them like they were going to a striptease performance, and they're gonna have them come out there and dance and shake their butt and everything else that they do, which is very adult themed.
Yeah. And
they're just, I'm sorry, you're, as parents, you suck.
Yeah. No, it is pretty sucky. Yeah, I never watched those shows as a kid. But I feel like that was kind of the start of it. I think this is getting even worse, where it's stuff that's obviously perverted. Mm-hmm. And let's just, okay, honestly, I hate removing the Bible, but like, let me just say, if I'm just like a reasonable homosexual person, I don't know if I would want people doing that. Like, I don't
think heterosexual couples should be doing that type of stuff in front.
I don't think so either.
I'm just kind of no all around. They're kids.
Yeah, no, because I agree. Because I've been to weddings, because I shoot weddings. I photograph weddings. I photograph them, guys.
Shoots them, hangs them.
And I'll see the kids join in with the provocative dancing.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, these are, again, heterosexual, you know, kids, it makes me cringe to see kids doing it. Like, they shouldn't be doing any sort of sexual types of dancing, period. Yeah. Period. But the fact that they're making even more explicit, making it about this guy in this movie, and they're kind of almost normalizing it for parents to be doing with their kids. So that really bothers me quite a bit. And we were kind of talking, I kind of made the point earlier that there are some people that are so outspoken about this, and they can be groomers themselves.
Right.
And there was a case of that about a Michigan school employee who was arrested for soliciting kids for sex. Now, I looked all over for this guy. Mm-hmm. His name, Eric Rahman. Now, Eric Rahman, I looked this guy up. I looked up Eric Rahman, Michigan school teacher. I don't think there was a single major news outlet that was covering this story.
Really?
Like, I couldn't. No.
Just local?
Yeah, this one is local, but we understand now that local news tends to make it into national news if it's important enough culturally.
Right. Apparently this is not important enough.
No, it's not. So this is why the website I've picked out is kind of obscure, but it's a confirmed story. I've looked it up on multiple places, mm-hmm. and there's even a video of this guy making this empowered speech about how we should be able to teach this in schools. And Libs of TikTok, thankfully Libs of TikTok did cover it. And she says, Michigan public school employee who spoke at a school board meeting in support of teaching an LGBT curriculum and mocked parents was arrested for allegedly trying to meet a minor for sex.
This type of stuff has been going on for a while.
But why is it not catching on? This is why I kind of said in the beginning of the episode, we're telling you things you already know. We already know a recession was coming. Right. We already know this stuff is happening. But it's almost like you have to say it a little bit louder and be like, hey, this is kind of an issue. Like, okay, let me go ahead and move. I'm going to move over topics. All right, I'm going to move over. Let's talk about transing the kids, okay? We know that transing the kids has consequences. We've been screaming this from the rooftops. All right, so finally, they are now putting a warning, I believe the FDA is, on these puberty blockers because they are causing side effects. Let me just look at the side effects here. So okay, here's the symptoms of taking GnRH. It's headache, blurred or loss of vision, diplopia, which I don't even know what that is, but it doesn't sound good. Pain behind the eye or pain with eye movement, tinnitus, dizziness, and nausea. All right, this is from the FDA. Okay, this is not just a group of scientists that say, hey, we think this is dangerous. The FDA is like, hey, there's a lot of risks to these kind of puberty blockers. Imagine what happens if you're taking these over a long period of time. Like, and you can read the whole article and listen, there's a bunch of words in here that I can't even say because I'm not even sure what they are. But I do know puberty blockers. I do know what headache is. I do know what blurred and lost vision is. I do know about tinnitus, dizziness, and nausea. And so they're basically trying to say, hey, there's a huge safety concern with this.
Yeah, there was actually a transgender clinic in the UK that was just shut down for unsafe practices. That's what I was trying to pull up right now because that triggered something for me. But let me see. I'm not completely familiar with this website, but all right, town hall biases to the right. That's fine. But so reporting on it, shut it down. UK tells only transgender youth clinic to lock it up. It's one thing to come out as transgender in high school. I'll even consider junior high to be acceptable. What's happening now is ridiculous. 4-year-old kids are coming out as transgender. We have teachers distributing puberty blockers to minors and not telling parents. It's a mess. This is all the type of stuff you're talking about here.
And so, yeah, in this study, so what is the age that they said in there? Go back up. What was the age? 4-year-old kids. Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, 4-year-old kids. Okay, I know it's not like this is more of in the beginning of his article, he's just kind of naming a number. But in this case, to confirm it, all 6 cases were reported in birth-assigned females, ages 5 to 12. 5 to 12.
That's so young. You can't drive. You can't buy alcohol. You can't legally vote. You can't buy cigarettes or cigars. You can't do any of that.
Yeah.
But here they are saying, just take it. It's reversible. It's not as reversible as they would like to make it out to be.
It's not reversible. And this is the thing that I learned. And this should be such a duh. Like, we should already know this. But when you block puberty, you block bone development. And when you block bone development, you have weak bones and you can get osteoporosis. There's already been a case of, like, this is the thing. This is probably the first time in history that we have such a large section of young people that we're trying these puberty blockers on.
Right.
And we're trying, like, and we are starting, this trickle is coming right now. You can see it, of the nasty results.
It's a mass experiment.
It is a mass experiment.
There's no long-term study on this.
Yeah. Hear me. They are experimenting on your children. They are experimenting on your children. This is not transphobic to say that this isn't safe, that this isn't good. That's not transphobic. I would rather lose my job than cower in silence regarding this issue. It just makes me so furious that they would take the most vulnerable among us and sacrifice them for the sake of their broken, damaged, evil, sadistic ideology. Drives me crazy.
No, I'm with you on that. I think what makes the entire thing even more evil, though, is that they're not telling you, hey, this is an experiment. That's not what they're going on about. They are not being upfront about it. They're telling you this is the cure. This will help you. This will fix everything because things just feel wrong. And this all, but it is an experiment.
It is. It absolutely is. I've heard that there are medical professionals that'll say, no, this is, you can just pause puberty. It's just a pause. How stupid does that sound? How stupid? Like, no, you can't pause it. You can't.
They still haven't figured out how to stop people from getting old at this point. I mean, and this is more than, I mean, I don't know if it's more, but it's up there with it. We're going to stop you from developing into what your genetic code currently is, and we're going to have it go to the opposite side.
And it's just not possible. And there's too many damaging side effects, not just physically, but emotionally.
Mm-hmm.
I can't imagine the kind of hell that these kids are going to go through when they realize that this was all a huge mistake and they can never unmutilate their body.
Yeah, puberty already messes you up enough with all the new hormones and new hormone levels that you're getting.
You can't think straight.
No.
I couldn't think straight when I was...
She couldn't.
Wow. You only knew me when I was 17. All right, he wasn't there for when I was like 14, 15. Like that's when things got like, messed up. But you can't think. You can make some logical decisions, but you can't make permanent logical decisions like that. It's just not possible.
No, that's the entire reason why they base, certain age restrictions the way they have. Driving at 16, voting, guns, cigarettes at 18, and then alcohol at 21. Heck, you can't even rent a car till you're 26 without paying out your butt on insurance.
Yeah, you can't.
But let's give them period blockers. Let's let them change their gender. Would they do this if you were going to be changing, like, if you want, like, I feel like I should only have one arm.
Yeah. Yeah.
Would you support letting the kid have their arm removed? And this is especially for any of the kids whose parents are psychotic enough to let them go through a gender transition surgery, here's sex reassignment.
Well, here's what's getting crazy now. Here's what's getting crazy is that there are coming out multiple cases. There's a case in Canada. I believe there's been a case here in the U.S. I'm sure that there's been more of, even in that article you read, they're not telling parents that they're doing this. And some parents, if you have a divorce or separation and one parent wants the surgery and wants the transition and the other parent does not,
mm-hmm.
that parent is not going to make it. They're not going to be able to keep their child's dignity. And so they will go forth with the transitioning. And so that's what's dangerous. And that's why I'm trying to get people to pay attention. There's more than just me and much better voices, but to pay attention and protect your children and say no. Mm-hmm. Don't just say no. You need to do your research into candidates that are not going to support this absolute garbage and mutilation of our society. You gotta do the research. You gotta put in the work,
and you gotta pay attention. This type of issues have gotten to the point where I don't think you can just sit on the sidelines anymore and let it go. Otherwise, a lot of people could argue you're being complicit into what is being done to people.
I think at this point it's possible, especially I think, if you're of religious practices. I think that, especially Judeo-Christian practices, you're going to want to really pay attention to this because it goes against pretty much everything biblically. If there's a Christian that tells you that transgenderism is biblical, they have completely warped scripture. But also, even if you are not religious and if you just have common sense that biology tells us that a boy is a boy and a girl is a girl, you got to speak up for that because your kids can get really hurt.
Yeah, no, kids' lives are in danger, and that is partially why they shut it down in England. And this is surprising coming from the Daily Caller. At least they're just reporting on it.
It's sad that the bar is that low.
Yeah, well, and they're doing it at the same time that Biden is pushing child sex changes, which is part of the title here. Let's see, this came out on July 28th, so just the other day. England's National Health Service plans to shut down its only youth gender clinic after an investigation found it to be unsafe for children, according to The Telegraph. An independent review found that medical professionals at Tavistock Transgender Clinic were pressured to unquestioningly affirm children's gender identities and skip the normal clinical assessment process, prompting the NIH to shut down the clinic by spring 2023. The NHS will replace Tavistock with regional clinics offering a holistic approach more focused on children's mental health. And this is based on a report from The Telegraph. But they were essentially shut down because they're not going through the actual assessment. They're not checking these kids. They just are like, okay, we're just going to do it. The 5-year-old wants to be reassigned. We're going to go for it. It doesn't matter. We're not going to do a full mental health evaluation. Right. This is the same reason that I'm blanking on the person's name, but one of the originals that started doing these type of transgender surgeries has said, I'm done. I'm getting out of this. It's far reaching to the kids. and they like it's weighing on their conscience.
Yeah. And well, that's the issue with these types of gender clinics is that I've heard reports you can pretty much get, if the moment you go in, you could probably get sex change hormones, within the hour.
Mm-hmm.
It's not super hard. There's not a lot of safeguards for this stuff. But the issue is a lot deeper. Is if you have a kid that's going through depression or they have anxiety, and they say they need to change their gender, there are a lot of other things to look at first. You need to look at their home life. You need to look at the state of their parents, economic status, what stresses they have going on at home, at school, before you decide to change their gender. I think that these are very basic things to be asking. But again, that's not the point. The left doesn't want to ask the questions because they have a goal. I really do think that their goal is to kind of hinder society to a point that they are reliant on them. I think if you have more kids that are incapable of growing up and are incapable of giving birth or leading on normal lives, your society falls apart. And it goes into that dystopian world that they're trying to create.
Mm-hmm.
And so
and they're willing to sacrifice your kids to get there.
They are.
There's we've known that for 50 years, thanks to Roe v. Wade.
Yeah, they're literally sacrificing them.
Yeah, sacrificing and now mutilation.
Yeah.
That is the depths that they are willing to go to get whatever vision of world order that they want for this country.
Yeah. And while I was doing, I think this would be a good way to end off. I was doing a little bit of from the article from OFM, that more LGBTQ plus site. It did get me thinking about Orwell. And I want to end with a quote that kind of sums up pretty much our entire topics for this week. Mm-hmm. And it says, quote, "Who controls the past controls the future. Who controls the present controls the past." And if you think about that, all right, how are they controlling the past? By switching definitions, trying to erase it, trying to look for different ways to interpret it. It's small, it's slight, but it all adds up. And they're getting bolder, and they're getting bigger, and they're starting to change more, even faster. And so they're able to control our present by redefining the past.
Yes. And
therefore building for themselves the future that they desire in their more dystopian world.
Yeah, I agree. And the quote reminds me of history is defined by the victor.
Ooh, what's that?
Saying just that those who win get to define how history looks, and which, if anybody remembers, even our American history is completely biased in the way it approaches things. One of the biggest ones for me is the way that history approaches Pearl Harbor. Initially, Pearl Harbor, or even when Americans or even when Europeans first came to this country and encountered Native Americans, is like, first, second, maybe third grade, you're just like, oh, everything was good. Like they landed here and they made friends with the Indians or the Native Americans. And then you find out, no, that's not at all how it went. They usually warred with them and killed them, and the Native Americans killed them back. And it was just a bloody beginning. And it was not the Pocahontas type of history that we're kind of led to believe, even in some of the history books. And it's like each time that I read through that more, or the Revolutionary War, or about Pearl Harbor, you get through a little bit more and you're like, wow, there's some really crappy things that our country has done. But as far as education goes, they kind of just leave that out. Like Pearl Harbor happened, anybody that was Japanese was thrown into concentration camps here in America.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, we responded with 2 nuclear bombs, which decimated thousands, if not millions, of innocent civilians. And that I
actually just finished watching an entire 3-part documentary about Pearl Harbor, a minute-by-minute documentary with Steven, which he so graciously agreed to watch with me. And there was a lot of when you see it all, like the Japanese did a horrific thing. It was horrific.
They did.
But at the same time, you see some of these generals and they really screwed up too. And so the whole thing, it just kind of showed me at the end, I was like, everyone the world is so sinful and it's so messy and it's so difficult. And so we definitely made some mistakes with the Japanese, that's for sure. There's no doubt about that. That's why I kind of get a little up in arms. I'm like, why would we do that?
It's like the way that you initially learn about it is like, yeah, like we took it to him, like, yeah, they attacked us and we just kind of finished it, in one shot with the nuclear bombs. It's like, it's a bit of an overreaction, I feel like, because they did attack us. They attacked a military base. Yeah. What did we drop? We dropped nukes on cities.
Yeah, which,
not military base, cities.
No, listen, I don't disagree. I can definitely, from what I could tell, at least, it seemed like it was an emotionally charged time.
For sure. And if you wanted to learn the atrocities of what America did, and it's probably best to go study Japanese history and get it from their perspective.
For sure. And I think the point is to always just to be honest in history. Don't try to manipulate if you can, though that's a lot harder for human beings to do than we'd like to think. But we're out of time for today. Mm-hmm. If you get a chance, like, subscribe, comment, follow us on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube under Resident
Rumble,
Skeptics.
Yep.
Rumble.
We're pretty much on everything at this point.
We're on Rumble, not on Bumble. Sorry. But we are out. I'm Jordan.
I'm Connor.
And this is Resident Skeptics. See you next time.